He's tempting us.
So when we last were together yesterday, we had that Representative Templeman would put together some thoughts and share them with us. And I know he's been in touch and communicated with the committee with some proposed language. I want to just give him a chance to say a word or two about it and then hear whether the rest of the committee has any reaction. And I've also put together in a memo format all of the numbers that we came to agreement on yesterday. That's now posted on our committee page, a draft of it. Thank you to Mike O'Grady for taking a look at it. One thing I will note that we may not have been clear on yesterday, I wasn't clear on it. We had agreed to support the recommendation of the Human Services Committee on the appropriation for the food bank. Food bank had been in front of us. We knew the request was for $3 million, and I don't believe that Human Services Committee is recommending the $3 million in its entirety. So there is no dollar amount in those sections where we're supporting the recommendation of the work of other committees. You'll see I left the dollar amount out because I wanted to be not get the wrong number in there. But we can add a sentence or a statement to the effect that we would be in favor of a larger amount of money if it's available. I'm just conscious of the fact that if we go too much further than that, it may be interpreted as we would prefer to see that than something else. So anyway, just wanted to highlight that. Otherwise, Dave, do you want to just?
Shall I read the entire email?
No, I wouldn't, but.
Maybe just the section that pertains to the.
And before you do that, John had a question
Just
again, what I said.
Food bank?
Yeah.
So Human Services is going to recommend what? Just
One,
Possibly 1 million, possibly something larger than that.
that was one time?
Yeah, I think it's one time. And the additional information is that they have, and I don't want to say things that are factually incorrect, but I believe that they are also recommending an appropriation to Meals on Wheels. That those two together are close to, if not the same as what was originally requested. So.
I just wondered if, there's sort of jurisdictional ask on something like this. I mean, does it ever happen that they recommend, one and we could recommend one too?
I'm afraid I don't have enough history in this role to answer that question, but I do think that we can make a comment saying, we are supportive of, as much funding as available in this particular case.
Especially if
knowing that we did take testimony and,
if they had a number for how much is coming from Vermont farmers, I think that would give us a number maybe to recommend too.
And I don't know, we can look back and see if we had that number.
Right. Say recommending $500,000 that would reduce the agricultural grant.
So, I don't know, but if there's a consensus in the committee, we can make that, that statement anyway. Dave, do you want to go ahead and however you want to present it.
So I'm thinking we do this quickly. I just read the section of language that I'd like to have added, and then I can answer any questions regarding specific points in that language. And this is thanks to Mike O'Grady, Attorney O'Grady, for sharing with me some language that I built this upon. The Secretary shall determine that there are significant interest in establishing certain parameters in the grant program before making an award, and shall give priority consideration to meet producers and processors, produce farmers and processors, specialty crop developers, while excluding maple sugaring, though not value-added maple manufacturing, excluding grain feeding operations and excluding hydroponic operations. Furthermore, the secretary shall abandon the first come, first served model, but rather adopt the section process detailed in Bill H-205 from this year and prioritizing small businesses and farmers. So if there's anything in there that stands out that you would like explanation on, I'd be happy to go into detail. Or you can read the email I sent out, which is a bit lengthy. I'm sorry.
My interpretation of the proposal from the agency was that it was not using first come, first served model. And I may be wrong about that, but.
I may be wrong myself.
Yeah, I know we talked about it, but then after looking at it, it seemed like now they were talking about.
A two-phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Period, yeah.
Okay, then I would omit that material then.
Yeah, and I think we're all sort of on the same page there.
My only concern with that is the exclusion of grain feeding operations and not just as it relates to dairy, but folks who are doing pigs or poultry who cannot sustain themselves only on a grass-based forage diet and often don't necessarily have enough coming from their own farm to supplement that feed. So grain is almost the most critical.
I meant to actually include those things because in my philosophy of farming, which we don't all share, grain is an egregious environmental strain. So I would be happy to change that to say feedlot. So specific to a particular type of grain feeding operation rather than grain feeding in general, if everybody feels okay with that.
How many small farms are doing a feedlot?
I'm sorry?
How many small farms do a
A
feedlot?
lot of small farms develop cattle to be sent to a feedlot. So that's what I would be indicating. So it wouldn't affect small farms. It would affect the development of a feedlot specific for receiving cattle from farmers to fatten them up before market.
So, and you feel that they would, as written, when we discuss small and medium size, they could be, otherwise they might be included and be eligible?
I believe so. I think that any small operator could receive something like this with additional funds, start a feedlot. If it's not specifically prohibited or excluded, I should say.
Yeah, Mike.
I was just gonna say that feedlot in Vermont includes pigs.
Technically, I'd be willing to remove it altogether. I mean, it's one of the most important things in my mind, but it sounds complicated and we're running out of time. So
Probably, yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. And I was thinking, do we need to have better understanding of, because I don't have that, that understanding. Okay. Well, we're working backwards from the end of the paragraph here, I guess. The other, yeah, John.
And just quickly, I mean, if you had like, Butterworks, not that we're doing dairy, but an operation that say explored making its own grain for chicken or swine, then.
they don't do it anymore though. They've given up. Yeah.
Say this is with Northeast Kingdom Grange or whatever.
Yeah.
It just gets more and more complicated the more you look at it. So we don't want to discourage people experimenting with grains in Vermont.
Then let's get rid of it altogether then. I'm willing to go there.
Okay.
And then keep the hydroponic,
Yeah. I
get
mean,
rid of the grain, get rid of the first come, first serve.
which apparently is already.
And then, all right. Are we completely, I don't know enough about maple production in the state to know, are we inadvertently harming some maple producers by cutting them out of this? And is that a mistake?
A valid question.
I would believe so.
Oh. So we're not punishing anybody here. We're just not providing grant money to them.
Some would say that's punishing.
Fair enough.
Jed,
To back up Joe's Representative Levitt and Representative Graham's comment, there are small maple producers that could benefit from, financial support for reverse osmosis technology to be more sustainable. I would support that.
What if we rephrased it and said, give priority consideration to, listed them, and didn't say excluding maple sugaring, but rephrased it to basically say we will support some maple sugaring, but it doesn't seem, I'm not wordsmithing all today, but it doesn't seem like it is an area that needs as much help as the others.
Mike?
Well, two things. One, and just zooming out a little bit, continuing to work our way up from the bottom of the paragraph. I'm a little bit concerned with excluding maple sugaring as the only thing being excluded if we're going to throw in specialty crops. I appreciate that specialty crops is a way to try to address the tree nut idea that I had brought up, but there are a lot of other specialty crops. Christmas trees are specialty crops.
Yeah.
A lot of non-ed.
Problematic.
Specialty crops. So if we're trying to get at this, sort of food processing and ag, I think we're trying to get at mostly edible agricultural products.
Okay.
And so that's just a concern there. And then, I wonder if there's a way to get at both of these concerns by not excluding maple sugaring, but somehow deprioritizing it in the grant. Like making the money available to the other categories first, and that, in some way sort of making it clear that we're prioritizing the other two categories produce.
Maybe Mike O'Grady can help us think through whether that's possible.
Could you restate the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'll let you restate it.
So is there a way to sort of put emphasis on produce and meat without removing maple? So for instance, making available funds for two of the three categories first and then allowing the third category to come in after.
You could do that, or you could say that a certain percentage of the fund should be allocated for produce, meat, and the other remaining for, that's kind of what the body did for with the CRF funds. They gave dairy farms and dairy processors like 22 million, and they gave other processors and small farm producers 9 million. So that's one way to do it. But yes, you could say you'd like to give priority to the meat and produce producers, either in the amount of funds or in the priority that's given in the award.
In the weighting of.
Right.
Yeah.
How do people feel about that?
Is that maple or just maple syrup?
Open to whatever. Just a suggestion of a way to keep maple, not take maple sugaring out entirely, but perhaps allow for the prioritization that some folks on the committee seem to have expressed.
Be fun.
Like 40-40-20 or something like that.
Yeah, well, if it's like that, then yeah, saying, we want the bulk of this to go to these others, and I think that also takes into account, as Representative Supernant addressed the other day, that there is this other new grant, pretty substantial grant program for maple sugars. Either that or waiting in applications themselves. I think that's probably a easier, cleaner way to do it than to get into the weighting of applications.
John,
I was just wondering if, from Mike's experience, is there a way to do this? Like, I thought what you wrote about the social resilience and social equity and logical economic resilience, like, is there a way that was very articulate and really spoke to me? So I was wondering, is there a way to do that while giving the agency a certain amount of freedom to, look through those descriptions as a filter? And then for us, I mean, potentially to say, come back and say, well, you clearly were not following the letter of the law on that. Because once you get into these particulars, like, it's okay for maple donuts, but not for sugaring, and it just gets really sticky.
Sticky, no pun intended. Yeah, like, so could we send a more generalistic theme and let them go from there? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Like our sentiments, basically?
and then monitor it, or you?
I think that the charge would be to have them look at these grants, maybe through these three sort of headings of whether it's, your sort of resilience headings.
So
And consider the grants, weight them by.
through that lens.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is we do that and we drop everything except the exclusion on hydroponic and include a caveat that Representative Rice put forward about putting a higher priority on meat and produce.
Quantify that or leave it?
I think I would be inclined to go with the way that John was suggesting, to say, maybe you don't even set the 40-40 of the others in case there's way more than prejudice, but maybe it's like maple shall not be more than 25% of it,
Right.
something like that.
And what if nobody applies in either of the first two categories? Then there's.
And it all goes to maple.
That seems highly unlikely.
No, I think it seems unlikely too, but then, I mean, I think we want to be careful and make sure the money goes out
Right.
somehow, but Representative Graham.
So I think to prioritize, I'm not sure what you would be gaining by prioritizing meat producers or processors. I mean, the big issue with beef is slaughter. The big problem with slaughter is you can't find people to work it. So I don't know how much advantage this would be for small producers, but maybe they could set up their own slaughter, I don't know. I do think that small maple operations could value from this program, both on the standpoint of being able to produce more maple, but also be more friendly to the climate, because if you get an RO, you're going to cut down your boiling operation time and fuel consumption considerably. Just one piece of equipment that small producers just simply can't afford to buy. So that's my pitch.
If I may, one thing I forgot to mention, or we haven't spoken in detail about, I just want to point out in my language here, the last sentence after the paragraph, and prioritizing small businesses and farmers. I didn't include medium there, just FYI.
Intentionally.
And intentionally.
You intentionally didn't.
I intentionally did not include medium there.
Prioritizing them, not excluding.
Not excluding, but prioritizing small businesses.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't do that before.
Okay, reactions, a couple of different couple of different directions here we might go.
It's an interesting point you make about labor being the big stopping point for slaughter facilities, not the actual facility themselves.
There's a lot of money out there for slaughterhouses.
That's right.
Build a new slaughterhouse or expand the current. Problem is they can't find people to work.
Yeah, yeah,
So you can build all you want, but if you're sitting there idle, you know, and modular units might work, but I don't know cost of them, and then what, if you want to do, you know, inspect it so you can sell retail. I don't think they have enough inspectors to,
yeah.
you know, really make that really effective.
Fair enough.
But I think maybe storage so that you could get more animals processed than you did get in a facility. You know, to increase the storage so that you could store more product instead of trying to get an animal every month to get 6 animals done and fine for 6 months. But the only thing I can.
So should I reiterate where we're at then? If we remove the constraints on maple, that would leave everything as presented by the agency. And correct me if I'm wrong here, with the exception of the exclusion of hydroponic and prioritizing small farmers.
Prioritizing small farmers, I do.
And adding the verbiage that you mentioned about resiliency. And or including the language that prioritizes meat and produce over maple. I don't think we've actually agreed on that, so.
Heather, then.
Yes, all of that feels really comfortable for me. And I would like to see whether it's that 25% or any number the committee agrees upon threshold for what maple can tap into. Because I think if we're talking about food, food resiliency. Food resiliency, I'd like that focus to be on the meat sector and the produce sector as being likely the most impactful with how many folks can actually feed. So yes, to all of that.
So you'd like to see a number?
Yes, I
Okay.
would, a set number for the industry.
John and then Mike.
Just a quick question. Has anybody heard if Maple Sugars are experimenting with solar, either to run their ROs or even their boilers? Do you know, Rodney? Are any sugar makers using solar to run their ROs or their boilers?
Not that I know of. I'm not saying there is.
Sort of off.
Takes a lot of power.
That sort of thing I could see a grant for.
It takes a lot of power and
That's
probably take a pretty good sized solar array. Even a small one.
I was just gonna say, you know, the number could even be 1/3. Like, the number could even just be making sure that there isn't some scheme to send 80% of this money to, you know,
Right.
just saying, hey, listen, the Maple should only take up 1/3 of these grant funds. You know, and not perhaps stipulate the other in case one is more popular than the other, you know, not saying equal thirds for each of the three, but just.
Should not be more than a third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like a reasonable place to settle.
Yeah.
Everybody's comfortable with that.
sort of what the agency proposed.
What's that? It's essentially, yeah, I think probably no one's gonna have an issue with that. And it does give flexibility for the other two categories and it maybe gives complete flexibility really up to that. Dave, do you, Representative Templeman, want to capture this in a new short paragraph and then we can tack it into the letter that, the memo that we've got drafted, be on our way?
How soon?
Sometime this afternoon. Yeah.
That could be done.
We do have a witness scheduled to come in at 1. So I don't want to keep folks here really much longer if we are at a good place. Some of us did just get an update from one of the advocates saying that, in fact, my mistake, the appropriation request is $3 million for the food bank. So that's good news, and we are happy to obviously support that. So we will break until 1. We're going to hear from at least 1, maybe 2 witnesses on H126, the 30 by 30.
Have a good vacation, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Two.
I'll see you on the